Hi, I'm Michaelangleo with Audioholics, and in this episode, I'll be doing part 2 of my AVM 90 8K review, where we'll be covering measurements, listening impressions, and my conclusions of Anthem's AVM 90 8K. So stay tuned, and I'll be right back. Welcome back. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to our channel here on YouTube. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. And as always, please be sure to put any comments or questions below. Let's get started. Welcome back. Before we get started, just a quick note that anytime you're looking at a high-end product, especially something like an Anthem AVM 90 8K, please ensure that you're making your purchases through an authorized dealer. Please note Anthem's authorized dealer network is located at the link below on your screen, and if you do happen to be without a local dealer, then please be sure to visit the online audioadvice.com, who is also our channel partner. Simply expand the description to expose the affiliate links below, and any purchases you make through these affiliate links help support this channel. Going with an authorized dealer like an Audio Advice ensures that you get the right support and expertise to set up the product properly so that you can maximize your joy and value out of it. So, let's get started. After I conducted my listening tests, we worked with Anthem directly to generate some bench tests of the AVM 90 8K specifically for this Audioholics review. We want to thank Anthem for their cooperation throughout the process, which took place over several months, and performing these measurements. The following measurements will give you a sense of how the product measured, and you can then correlate those measurements against my listening impressions, which I recorded prior to seeing any of these measurements. First up, let's look at the AVM 90's distortion and noise, which is simply excellent. Take note that total harmonic distortion and noise is infinitesimal at about 0.00076. Likewise, for those who like to reference Synad, the AVM 90 comes in at an impressive 102.4. The AVM 90's dynamic range is excellent at around 116.3 dB, which is almost 19.4 bits. The SMPTE ratio is solid, as is the multi-tone test. Linearity on the AVM 90 is excellent. And if we look at jitter, both the HDMI and coax behave exceedingly well. And finally, total harmonic distortion versus frequency. All in all, the AVM 90 is a solidly measuring unit, and the updated audio circuitry shows in the measurements. What do you say we sit down and talk a little bit more about the AVM 90's performance on music and movies? Let's turn to 2-channel music. I set up the AVM 90 with my benchmark AHB2 power amps bridged to my Revel Ultima 2 salons. Monoprice 8250X that sports Hypex Encore Class D modules and a Lexicon CX7 multi-channel amp, all fed a Focal 1000 IWLCR for my center channel and Focal 300 series for the height and surrounds. 4 per listen D212S subs anchored the system, and you can see my review of the per listen subs with the Anthem AVM 90 in a separate video segment here on the Audioholics YouTube channel. My Roon Nucleus server feeding an Oppo UDP205 and Cambridge Audio CXN V2 served as Roon endpoints. I also use a pair of Anthony Gramani's MSR spring traps in this room. The AVM 90, in case you're wondering who's it really for, is for the person who's looking for that next level reference grade audio performance in 2-channel or multi-channel music as well as home theater. I've had the AVM 90 in this setup for over 6 months, and from the first notes, this was precisely one of those experiences where you feel like you're hearing your music all over again for the first time. The AVM 90's musical performance is exhilarating, with transparency, depth, and breadth of soundstage, imaging, detail, dynamics, and timbral accuracy. The AVM 90's tonality comes across with, it's neutral without ever being analytical. So just allow me the opportunity to relate to some of my listening experiences. The first thing that really jumped out at me was the AVM 90's transparency. If you've auditioned high-end 2-channel audio gear, the AVM 90 fits that description of removing a veil or a screen in front of the music and presenting the music in the open. The ESS 9038 Pro DAC and upgraded audio circuitry really come to the forefront with music. The AVM 90's transparency into the music reminded me of the Class A SSP and the benchmark DAC 3 HGC, which have been among the best sounding DAC and multi-channel preamps that have ever come through my review setup. Listening to tracks like Larina McKinnott's The Gates of Istanbul from the Mediterranean Odyssey Live album, the AVM 90 renders the soundscape and cues against a totally black, silent background. The audience, sense of space, vocals, and instruments just pop on this track. The AVM 90's transparency is on full display from the Eagles' immortal classic, Hotel California from Hell Freezes Over. Space on this song is just endless space. The AVM 90's transparency lends itself to a pure, engaging musical presentation. Here, Don Fielder's guitar is pristine and lifelike, and as the audience chimes in, each shout is perfectly placed and detailed cleanly in space and time, and it's against a totally silent black backdrop. That leads me then to talk a little bit about Soundstage. And I'd like to just note, when we talk about Soundstage, we're talking about depth and height and breadth. And the AVM 90 is probably among the best, if not the best, I've ever had in this setup. The AVM 90 just makes the Revel Ultima 2 salons completely disappear. If you love classical, jazz, indie rock, or whatever your genre, the AVM 90 will thrill you with the way that it weaves this tall and wide and deep three-dimensional canvas. The Indigo Girls' Welcome Me really exemplifies this point. The AVM 90 paints the song's guitar riffs with pinpoint accuracy. And as Amy Ray and Emily Saylor's vocals come in, they're lifelike in size. Each guitar remains distinct and dimensional, as do their vocals when they harmonize during the refrains. And this song has several points of echoes and additional ambient sounds. All those are just beautifully layered on this soundstage. Now, the soundstage presentation on the AVM 90 frequently extends beyond the speaker's width, as it does on songs like the stereo version of Madonna's Vogue, and it opens into a deep, discernible soundstage well behind the speakers and the confines of the wall, where instruments, vocals, and choral elements are placed firmly in space and time. And maybe you're thinking, well, what's the difference between the AVM 90 and other processors or AVRs? And I think the best way to describe the presentation difference is that the AVM 90 creates a single three-dimensional stage, whereas if you listen closely, other electronics tend to stack flat two-dimensional layers on top of each other. The AVM 90's coherence, by contrast, is really superb. To that observation, many processors image well, but listen closely and you'll notice that time and again, they're actually flat. They falter in dimensionality, the sense, if you will, of a circle drawn on paper versus a sphere. The uncanny dimensionality is really the AVM 90 difference. And if you value that aspect in your musical experience, then the AVM 90 has what you're looking for. Brandi Carlile's Turpentine live at Easy Street Records in Seattle builds this incredible holographic image with presence within that soundscape. The opening guitar strike is lifelike, beautifully with accurate timbre And then the AVM 90 etches Brandi Carlile's vocals in lifelike size, and they're contoured with refinement and presence. What I experienced again and again through the AVM 90 Revels per listen tandem were exactly some of those sensory cues that you get from a live experience. Those are the intangible emotional sensations that connect you with the music in a far stronger and more intimate way. Now, the Revel Ultima 2 salons are renowned for their accuracy, not necessarily for their dynamics. And yet, the AVM 90 delivered a clearly heightened sense of dynamics from the Revels with each musical track. There are 3 tracks to illustrate this point. The Furs is jazz variants from the Ozone percussion group. The xylophone's audible cues on this track may seem inconsequential at first, but sitting and listening, you realize they're absolutely natural and they're lifelike in their dynamics without any sense of dynamic compression. And then the drums on this track, especially the kick drums, have tremendous punch and pop as you'd experience in a live venue. The second track is Diana Krall's My Live Is. The finger snaps on that song are a constant theme, and with the AVM 90, they audibly pop out at you in a similar way that you experience a finger snap, not just audibly, but also the movement of the air. And that sensation, that sound, that snap that you get in real life is very similar to what the Revel and the AVM 90s were able to do. And then the third track is King from Florence and the Machine's Dance Fever. Florence Welch's vocals start with this muffled, slightly recessed presentation as the song starts. Then as the music progresses and you get to the 45-second mark, Welch's vocals kick into this full gear with the line, "I need my golden crown of sorrow." And the sensation is just fabulous. The AVM 90 brings out this palatable, increased clarity, energy, and presence. And Florence Welch's vocals, as they press forward out of the recesses of the background, are just fantastic. They've got this tremendous dimensionality and presence about them. Now, not everybody appreciates nuances like these, yet these are the kinds of cues and heightened emotional experiences that differentiate the AVM 90's presentation. If these types of immersive musical experiences matter to you, then know that the AVM 90 delivers them in spades. Let's finish things off with the AVM 90's bass performance. In a word, it's reference. Pair the AVM 90 with a setup like these quad per listen D212S's, and you have Michaelangleo meets Thor's Stormbreaker. It's an unbelievable experience. Gene Della Sala turned me on to Angels Crying in My Bed by Christine and the Queens. And the AVM 90 per listen bass control on this song is absolute. Remember, the AVM 90 has the ability to independently EQ each of these 4 subs in the room. The end result is visceral, pinpoint, and authoritative bass. Even at moderately loud volumes, this song emits a physically tactile sonic pulse into your chest and skull. It's shaking the room right now as I'm talking to you. And yet the AVM 90 maintains the very texture of the bass and keeps those ethereal vocals unadulterated. Bass is always an instrument to complement the music, never an obstacle that you need to fight through when you're listening to the AVM 90 and the way that it presents everything. So why don't we turn to another favorite of mine, and that's Flight of the Cosmic Hippo by Bella Fleck and the Flecktones. This is a fantastic song to listen to about bass, and there is no bloat or hint of hanging bass lines anywhere as the AVM 90 is playing this with the per listens and the revels. The AVM 90 has complete control of the bass lines throughout the song and always gets the texture and decay just right.
as the AVM-90 exerts its control on each musical element. Bella's banjo, the harmonicas, drums, cymbals, bass lines and musical elements remain distinct and detailed. I never ever got the sense that these instruments were sparring for the same space. So the AVM-90 nailed it time and time again. I played Lord's Royals, Beyonce's Partition, total control, emotionally engaging, whatever the song. But let me round things out with Alicia Keys' No One. This song really encapsulates the allure of the AVM-90's audio reproduction and what it can really do with bass. The song No One has both chest-punching bass as well as a deeper layer of pulsating bass that you completely miss without a full-range system, and one that can bring out those details in bass reproduction. Alicia Keys' vocals, the accompanying instruments, and the chorus lines have all those elements that I spoke about earlier: dimensionality, timbral accuracy, presence, detail, and they just pop, completely unencumbered by this clean, deep, textured, pulsating bass that is a foundation upon which Alicia Keys' vocals perform. The end result is the AVM-90 is one of the few home theater processors that can absolutely do double duty with home theater, multi-channel music, and serve as a reference 2-channel preamp. The AVM-90 is nothing short of an unadulterated, high-octane movie experience. All those elements that I talked about with music, pitch black background, soundstage, pinpoint imaging, resolution, dynamics, detailed layering, and foundational bass, all come together with Dolby Atmos and DTS:X movies as a total sonic thrill ride. When these elements come together as they do with the AVM-90 8K, they create a dimension of emotional involvement with the on-screen action that is the decision point as to whether someone cares about surround sound or creating a soundscape. So let's just turn to 3 examples. Dune Part 1 is an absolute reference. The AVM-90 8K delivers the opening Sardaukar vocals paradoxically as it should. The distorted, grinding vocals are totally pristine. Again, coming from that black background with the transparency and delivery and dynamics. And then that's followed by the pistonic rendering of the Freeman thumper that calls Shai Hulud, like the heartbeat enveloping the listening space. If you turn to the spice scene that has the spice harvester, where again the worm comes and the worm just eats it up into the sand, you have this intense sensation with the fine elements. But I really want to turn to the ornithopter escape scene with Paul and Lady Jessica, where the AVM-90 just shines. The AVM-90 blows out the walls in the room. And what it does that I found to be a differentiator between, let's say, the AVM-60 and other processors and AVRs that I've had, is that it expanded out the spherical soundstage of the Dolby Atmos track. And that was really the differentiator. It pulled it out and pushed it out rather, and then it also heightened the sensation of all the details. The AVM-90 created a much larger dimensional space all around, and at the same time, Hans Zimmer's musical score, the wind, the instrumentation, everything tightened up with a heightened sense of focus, detail, placement in space and time, and dynamics. So even as it's playing in the background here, I'm just enjoying all of that dynamic sense that the AVM-90 is able to deliver. I love the scene from Mad Max Fury Road, the storm scene. And right now there's no room. The AVM-90 has just made the physical confines disappear. As the Furiosa-led motorized caravan approaches this immense storm as they're chased down by Immortan Joe, you have Junkie XL's score, which just hammers down and always remains as a distinct layer of the entertainment and experience, and doesn't muddy the voices, the wind, the engine roars, or any other of the on-screen action and details. Everything proceeds in its own layer with the ability to discern exactly what's happening in space and time. Again, this is really a reference presentation. The AVM-90 is able to do that in spades. Let's turn to the opening of Star Wars Episode 3. This is such a fantastic demo scene, and it really brings together a complex layering of music, deep bass as Anakin and Obi-Wan are passing through this fleet of galactic cruisers, and you have fine audible cues as well from the explosions, the spaceships, the droids, and the flying debris. And at times what you have is this intense panning from all around. But what really struck me most about the AVM-90's presentation versus other AVRs or processors that I've reviewed was this increased heightened sense of detail and dimensionality on every single object. And as the Republic ARC 170 starfighters come on screen and put their S-foils into attack position, I've listened to this scene I don't know how many dozens of times, and yet the engines had this increased dynamics and snap that punched me in my seat that I hadn't experienced previously with other setups. So it was as though I was experiencing all the nuances and appreciating the details in this scene and just being emotionally engaged that I didn't get in the same sensation with other units that I've had in this same setup.
So what's my take? Anthem has done a fine job designing the AVM-98K, and its MSRP of $7,499 is on target with a flagship processor of this caliber. The AVM-90 measures exceptionally well. It will best the AVM-70 in every area, such as dynamic range, noise floor, and distortion. You need to start getting to dedicated 2-channel DACs to get any significant measurable leaps forward over the AVM-90. And if you're debating between the AVM-70 and 90, then point your value measure at the decidedly improved audio quality in music and movies and the advantage of independent quad sub outputs. I feel that the Anthem AVM-98K is designed for that enthusiast who feels passionately about connecting with music and experiencing movies in the most emotionally engaging way possible. It's also for a setup that is based on a 9.4.6. It's perfect for that size multi-channel music and theater setup. The only potential rival to the AVM-90 is probably the Marantz AV10. Both offer quad independent sub outputs and high-end DACs with upgraded audio circuitry. The AVM-90 comes with a directional calibrated microphone and the latest Arc Genesis with phase control. And Arc Genesis, remember, is super easy to use, and you have the ability to calibrate and store up to 4 independent measurements or 4 profile configurations, and then assign each of those on an input by input basis. So you really have the ultimate in flexibility there. However, you need to spend extra with the AV10 for a calibrated microphone, plus additional costs for upgrades to jump up to Odyssey Multi-Q-X or Dirac, for example. The AVM-90 features a large, easy-to-read colored display versus the Marantz's porthole. The Anthem AVM-98K is really perfect for modern entertainment and will fit into any multi-protocol setup. It's designed from the ground up for 2-channel and multi-channel music streaming with onboard AirPlay, Chromecast, Spotify Connect, and Roon-ready certification for high-res streaming forthcoming. All of these technologies are integrated into a simple and easy-to-use interface. The AV10, by contrast, leverages the Heo streaming platform. It's an AirPlay 2 compliant streamer and is Roon tested versus the AVM-90's forthcoming Roon Ready, which fundamentally means that you're getting AirPlay 2 versus the full lossless RAT protocol with Roon. I've had the opportunity for a brief audition with the Marantz AV10 and AMP10 calibrated with and without Odyssey Multi-Q-X and paired with the outstanding Perlisten S7T speakers and a pair of in-wall JL Audio subwoofers with an Apple TV 4K set to stream lossless audio via Apple Music as the source. Naturally, that setup and room were completely different than my AVM 90 review setup. My recommendation after listening to a handful of songs I know exceptionally well is if you're comparing the Anthem AVM 90 and the Marantz AV10, pay special attention to the mid-range presentation of both processors with a particular focus on female vocalists and the sense of transparency, dimensionality, presence, and overall realism. There are clearly advantages and disadvantages to each processor, and you'll need to weigh which features mean the most for you if you're considering the two. You do need, and I want to emphasize this point, a significant leap in price, at least double up to quadruple, to start getting more channels, more granular features, and finer control over your theater environment, all of which come with far more complexity. Most users either can't afford or will never utilize that level of customization. I know Anthem products exceedingly well. I've owned the Anthem AVM 20, AVM 50, upgraded to the 50V, auditioned the D2V, and I owned the AVM 60. Simply put, Anthem's AVM 98K is both objectively and subjectively Anthem's best processor ever. The Anthem AVM 90 is the apex predator of pre-pros under $8,000. In fact, I love the Anthem AVM 98K so much that I purchased the review unit. It's not leaving my rack. The AVM 98K really positions you for today and tomorrow. It's 9.4.6 speaker layout, HDMI 2.1 and 8K support. The multi-protocol architecture really future-proof you as much as anything you can buy today. Let's also remember that Anthem has a history of platform stability, meaning that they have more than just a 2-year life cycle on their products, and the company's support is really top-notch. The inability to assign speaker outputs independently, such as adding a second row of surrounds instead of front wides, the absence of Auro 3D, those are some of the few limitations that you'll run into with the AVM 90. And when it comes to Auro 3D, remember, there's really no mass content available. The AVM 90's low noise floor and transparency into the music are simply stunning. And for me, it very simply boils down to this. Every time I sit down with the Anthem AVM 90, it just sounds so right. Imaging, dimensionality, and detail are the best that I've ever heard from an Anthem product. The ability to resolve nuances and create finely sculpted three-dimensional images in space and time are all breathtaking. And the AVM 90's improved dynamics make two-channel and Atmos music and movies come alive in an intoxicating way. The end result is engagement with whatever content I threw at it in a deeper and more emotional way. Pair the AVM 98K with the right source material, high-performance speakers and subs like the Revel Ultima 2 Salon and the Perlisten D212Ss, and then strap in for a performance that will just blow you away. If you long to be mesmerized by the music and transported right into movies, then go straight for the AVM 98K. You can't miss, and it gets my highest recommendation. Don't forget our Patreon channel at patreon.com/audioholics. We appreciate your support. You'll get direct access to us, you can ask questions, and you can even suggest topics for future programs.